Daniel, welcome back again for another video. I think this is now episode 13 for us. So once again, I'm really interested to see what kind of DAX patterns we're going to get into, and hopefully I have a little something to learn as well from the video today. It's always an extra fun bonus for me. So
Great. Yeah, hi Reid, and thanks for the intro again. Let's have a look at something that I see like all the time, and actually I saw people complaining about it on Twitter or other social media. You'll see what I mean in a second. So I borrowed the overall formula from SQL BI, just adapted it to showcase the anti-pattern. So anything peculiar you notice about this, Reid?
let's see. Has one value. Interesting. You got a lot of nested variables in this that are like cascading down into themselves. Normally, like variables that are declared before you ever even start a calculation. So that's kind of number one. Is I feel like if you have a variable, that's usually the very first thing and on your first line of code in DAX. So this is an interesting choice of order of operations for this. So essentially, if you're within a single calendar year, you are doing a bunch of filters. You have a variable A that's being done, and then inside of variable A, there is a B and a C, and then those are doing some interesting things to determine, basically, it looks like sales within a range from your min and your max. I'm assuming the configuration is a slider, kind of between the adjustment of like a range that you have for those. And then you have another variable D, which is equal to C, that it's not, so there's so much going on in here.
Yeah,
And
that's right. It's just so
if
confusing, isn't it?
like even for me, like I can piece, as you can see, like I'm piecing apart this, but it's like, yeah, it hurts my brain a little bit. Like I can figure it out given probably like 5 or 10 minutes, but it's still like the why. There's so many whys that I see in this, and then the result is you are counting the rows of the customers where you're keeping the basically you're seeing what customers meet the criteria. So basically, is a customer who has sales in this range. So I'm going to guess like sales above 500,000, below 5 million. And I would like the return of how many customers have total sales that exist in some range. And I would guess you have a slice on the page for that, but there's probably multiple things that can be removed from this, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you're very good, and you still guessed what this measure does. You see, the important part here is that these variable names, they make no sense. Like, some people like these names like A, B, C, D, and you, given that you've got years of experience, you can still figure out what this all means. For someone who has less experience, it would be quite painful, I would say, because A, B, and C, just like I said, make no sense. And yet I see it all the time. Like, why do people like these names? Because they're short, or because they're like sequential? I don't know. It's no good reason, I think. So in my mind, it would help a lot if variables had some more meaningful names. And so it's
that's a big thing. Yeah, it's just like I don't A B like what? Yeah, no, like they should have friendly name, because that like half, at least a third of the function of variables is to give complex 20-line code. This is customer above 10,000. Oh, that's I know that the goal of this calculation is to identify this.
Yeah. Readability is very important. Even if you're experienced like Marco Russo or Reed Evans or Matt Ellington, it's still very important. So let's have a look. We'll see the other example. So here I actually have the variables with proper names. And so now it's a bit easier to know what's going on. So you've got customers in a segment and sales of customers, a customer, and so on. So it makes it much easier to read. Now, maybe one more thing that I would suggest in case you're writing complex formulas like this, and unfortunately, in some cases, you just cannot avoid it. Like, yes, the best DAX formulas are simple formulas. In some cases, they have to be complex, like this formula is an example of dynamic segmentation. So it has to be complex. There's just no way to make it simple, even if you pre-calculate something in like Power Query, because this is dynamic. So it has to be done in DAX, right? So when you write long formulas like this, can you make it even better? Yes, by adding comments like this. So it really tells you what's going on. It explains, like, even if somebody else opens this formula, or if that someone else is you sometime later, because how many times did you write a formula, then came back to it later and were like, what is this? Like, surely it happened to me quite a few times. Like, I don't know about you.
Yep. I will say, like, I use variables extensively. I still, to this day, don't comment as much as I should. If I was writing something this complex for a customer, I probably would. But I'd say like the average calculation, which this is more complex than normal. Properly named variables and formatting gets you most of the way to the finish line on how the measure is working. But with ones that are more complex like this, and especially if you're handing this off to someone who is less experienced than you, the inline comments really do go a long way.
Yeah. Maybe something I'd like to point out is, in addition to comments with like double dashes, you can also use 2 forward slashes. And also, let's say you type something like this, and maybe you something like this, and you want to make it a comment, you can select this and press Shift Alt A, and then it's gonna insert the forward slash and asterisk on both ends and make it a multi-line comment. So Shift Alt A is the combination, and then you press it again, and it's no longer a comment.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah. So yeah, the key takeaway from this episode, and maybe it's part of the broader discussion about naming conventions and so on, at least within your formulas, make your formulas readable. Like, obviously, in addition to the fields being readable, because in some cases, you may have different people building models and building reports. And yes, the people who build the reports may not look into the formulas. They may not need to, because it could be, say, a live connection. And so you think it doesn't matter. Well, if overall your model has good naming conventions, such as the column names are easy to understand, the table names, and so on, it's not only useful for report builders, but also in case you enable visual personalization and use, say, perspectives in combination with that to reduce the number of fields visible to end users, then even the end users will see the fields and tables that are in your model. And so good names make it much easier for them to pick the right field. So you should avoid things like TBL, sales, or whatever, like dim, because normal people don't care about dims and facts. They're normal. It's us who care about these things. So use proper English names as much as you can. That's the
Agreed. No, I think that paired also with sometimes longer code isn't bad if it makes it more readable to the person you're delivering it to, or who has to be in charge of it.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool. Thank you so much. Please don't forget to like, comment, or share this video. Now, if this is your first time to my channel, or you want to see more of these awesome videos, please click that subscribe and notification button. Also, feel free to show your support by becoming a channel member. Last but not least, you can download the file for today's video from my blog files page using the link down below. So until next time.